This is what they've done. So this so-called fascist Turkish government that's being presented to Western people is removing a lot of the darkness that had descended upon the people from before. But people are very worried. There's people that are secular and they think, oh, these are the Muslims taking over. Well, they're Muslim people, but they're committed to a secular state, right? And the idea that Islam and secularity are mutually exclusive is false, because the vast majority of Islamic history had relatively secular states. They weren't really Islamic states. The whole concept of an Islamic state is a fantasy in the minds of a lot of the modern Islamists. But if you actually study Muslim history, that you will find, yes, Islam was the state religion, but the states functioned just like a secular state functions, because religion actually has very little to do with the running of a state. Building roads has nothing to do with what madhab you follow. Oh, that's a Hanafi road. No, that's a madhab. Right? The madhab means road in Arabic, but madhab is a school, is a metaphor taken from the real madhab, which is a road. No, a road is, you can build it from stone, you can build it from asphalt, you can build it from concrete, and that's just what you want is honesty, you want vetting, you want transparency. Those are secular ideals as well, right? A post office is not an Islamic concept, right? You don't need, we need Islamic stamps. Yeah, you can put the head of, like Muslims had La ilaha illallah on their coins. Okay. In America, they have kind of La ilaha illallah, tawakkalna ala Allah. That's right. I mean, that's okay. America's a secular state. It still has tawakkalna ala Allah, right? So that's okay. You can have in God we trust. It's not. You can be secular and still trust in God. It's okay, right? Municipalities are not, the water doesn't, I need a Hanafi, they call it Hanafiya in Arabic. I need a Hanafiya. This is a Maliki Hanafiya. No, you don't need, you just need a Hanafiya. You just need a water, right, tap that works. And that's municipalities, and all you want is some honest guy in there. If he's a secularist who's honest, fine. If he's a Muslim who's honest, fine. As long as the water gets there, it's been purified, it's not going to make you sick, right? Seriously, think about it. The vast majority of government just does not relate to religion. It just relates to common decency. And that's why you can live if Muslims were literally taken from like 8th century Syria or Palestine and dropped into Norway, they would think that, it was like the caliphate of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Like there's so much social justice. They would be amazed at how much social justice are in these Scandinavian countries. They're secular countries. So this whole idea, but no, you have to have had punishment. This is what, so Islam is reduced to, there's 4 agreed upon had punishments, 13, there's debates about, even apostasy laws, all these things, they're all debated. There's nothing fixed in stone. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Idra'u al-hudud mastata'tum." Avoid implementing penal punishments as much as you're able to. No, we'll cut, let's get these hands cut off. If you implemented had punishment for theft, you couldn't shake hands anymore. You wouldn't be able to shake hands. Everybody'd be like, nice to meet you, right? From the president all the way down to the street sweeper, man. We would. Am I making this up? So.
When you were in Konya, you talked about the delusion about the concept of an Islamic state by some Muslim Muslims. And I would like to know if you can precise what you mean about that.
About what?
about the concept of an Islamic State in the head of some modern Muslims. And he talked about
not to take it out of context. People kind of because I gave a whole talk and they put a 1-minute clip on YouTube and took it out of context. Yeah, so I mean that happens to me a lot for some reason. My point was that the idea of an Islamic State. First of all, there is no word in Arabic from the time of the Prophet for state. Doesn't exist. Dawla, which is the modern word that's used for state, is a word that was used the opposite of a state. It actually meant revolution. And so the Abbasids called themselves as Dawla al-Mubarakah because that as time passes, we give this thing to different people. So they said, now it's our turn. So the Dawla was Azim, wa Dawla. These are all terms that came later. The Prophet called governance Hada al-Amr. And that's what the Umayyads called it. And he would say, in a hadith, he said, لا نعطي هذا الأمر من طلبه أو حرص عليه. We don't give هذا الأمر. And that's why you call the Amir, and you call the governance the Imara. Because it's about Amr, it's command. It's the ability to tell people, do this, don't do that. And that's what government has. They have coercive power. So my point is that a lot of the modern ideas about what's called an Islamic State actually come out of modern political ideologies. They don't come out of an Islamic tradition. Pre-modern governance was very different from modern governance. And that was my point. And that also that religion has very little to do with statecraft. That, for instance, my point was that municipalities is what you want when you have rulers. You want them to be upright and you want them not to be corrupt. And there's ways to do that. In a place like Canada, they have checks and balances, they have oversight committees, they have ways of protecting corruption, even though there's always going to be corruption. But this is a relatively, this is one of the most decent states in the world, and that's recognized by the indices that corruption indices that they do. I can't remember where Canada is placed, but it's very high on the list, up there with some of the least corrupt states in the world. But they have ways of doing that. It's not that they're not the same people. Trust me, human nature is human nature. Whether you're in Islamabad, or whether you're in Cairo, or whether you're in Ottawa, it's the same human nature. But in certain societies, when corruption becomes endemic, then it becomes very difficult to purify those societies because corruption becomes a way of life. And once it's, if you have an apple, when it's a little bit corrupt, you can just cut it out and still eat it. But at a certain point, the whole apple becomes corrupt, and then you just have to throw it away. A lot of Muslim states are like that. They're just completely rotten to the core. And in these countries, it might be 20, 30%, maybe 10. If you're in Finland, maybe it's even less than that. I'm not talking about personal morality. I'm talking about just how the people are governed and where the money goes and how it's used. In America, we have an alliance between Wall Street, between industry, finance industry, the military, and politics. And so we have an extremely corrupt system, but the genius of American corruption is that it's generally legislated. And so they can do the most egregious crimes, but they do them legally. And there's some benefits to that. In the United Nations, they call it white corruption as opposed to black. So it's when perks are done over the table as opposed to under the table. In the Muslim world, they'll have a budget for a bridge, and the bridge gets built halfway, and then the budget ran out. And it's not because they didn't budget enough for it; it's because it just disappeared. So here, the bridge gets built, and then everybody goes home with their pockets full. Because they budget the corruption into it from the start. So that was my point. Really. I mean, I'm all for Islamic governance if it's real, but I don't. I mean, I think a lot of Muslims have this fantasy that Islam is a kind of welfare state where everybody has entitlements, and I think pre-modern states were far more libertarian than they are today. Far more libertarian. 19th century America was very libertarian. Up till World War I, people could travel anywhere without a passport. You could come to America or Canada without a passport, and if you passed their really simple health test, they let you in, and you stayed, and that's the way it was. World War II changed everything. I mean, World War I, it changed everything. But before that, Palestinians used to come to America. If you had enough money to come on the ship, you just showed up and they let you in. And there's a strong argument that immigration should be permitted globally, that it's a human right to migrate. Humans have always migrated to different places. And that would make it would force more social justice. Because right now we have societies that are so bloated. And I mean, we're basically what Malcolm would have termed house Negroes. I mean, we're basically living in the master's house, right? We're still slaves. We're all indebted, and we work to pay off all these debts. We have school debt. There's $1.2 trillion debt. School debt in the United States is greater than credit card debt. And it's all being put into these financial instruments now. It's the next bubble, and they charge 7% interest, even though they rent the money at 1% interest. They loan it out to the students at 7%. That's immoral. It's immoral. Somebody coming out of college, starting their life with $100,000 in debt. It's wrong. This is the type of civilization that we're in. It's a slave debt civilization. And out in the rest of the world, they're in the fields. They're working so that we can live like this, right? Everybody's wearing these cheap shoes that were manufactured in some sweatshop of Indonesia or something like that. People are wearing clothes that were manufactured with child labor. You're eating chocolate that was harvested by slave labor, right? CNN had an article that argued that the average American had 55 slaves working for them around the world, right? So this is the type of civilization that we're living in. And the world is so grossly out of balance. And I think as Muslims, we're challenged. How do we live more ethical lives? I think we should be developing our own fair trade industries. We should have our own clothing lines. We need to open our own banks. We should have our own credit unions. And this is what we should be doing as a community. We should have our own credit union. We should have our own insurance system. We have tens of thousands of Muslim doctors in Canada and North America. We should have our own insurances where they pay insurance to capital system where they actually get money back. Instead of just sending, we've got, on the average, these doctors paying $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year. You just take 30,000 doctors and multiply that by 30,000. And you look at the kind of wealth that you're handing over to these horrible insurance companies that will screw you at every chance that they get. They will completely rip you off at every chance that they get. Why don't we have our own auto insurance companies? Why everybody has to drive a car? Why don't we have our own auto insurance companies? These things aren't hard to do. It's not rocket science, as they say. It's just crazy. But anyway, I could go on. I couldn't, but I won't. So I don't want to do the best on that. Immorality is a kabira, but it's not kufar, unless you say it's permitted. And then you have followed Iblis. And so he said, just make